Hello, coming to you from one of the shining beacons of board gaming, Omaha, Nebraska. Welcome to the Out of the Dust podcast. I'm your host, Bryce, Mr. Dinosaur Journey. After listening to episode 2, one of the listeners wanted to know what other nicknames I had in junior high. That's one of them right there, Mr. Dinosaur. Anyway, an Out of the Dust board game is a game that gets played that you hadn't previously played in a year or more. In other words, it's been a while since you last played it. But why did the game get dusty? Why did you decide to dust it off? How does the game compare to how you remember it? Are you likely to play it more often in the future? These are the questions that we're interested in examining on Out of the Dust. In case you're tuning in for the first time, I'm the moderator of the Out of the Dust Geek List on Board Game Geek. The Out of the Dust Geek List is one of the recurring monthly geek lists on the site, joining such other popular ones like Favorite New to Me of the Month, New to Me a Year Ago, and Games Only I Played. The main focus of this podcast is highlighting some of the Out of the Dust games that I and other contributors to the Geek List have been playing. There are a few other short segments on this podcast as well, sometimes unrelated, and sometimes tied in with an Out of the Dust perspective. For the Out of the Dust segment this month, I'd like to talk about Krosmaster Arena, a game that has recently been added to the lineup at BoardGameArena.com. I have a physical copy of this game, but haven't played it in years. I was excited to see this digital implementation, and figured it would be a good chance to brush up on the rules again. Then I thought maybe I could play it with my oldest son. That was the plan anyway. It had been 4 years, 1 month, and 16 days since I last played it, and man, this game did not age well for me. I'll admit it, I bought this game for the middies. I thought they were really cool and that the chibi style was super cute. But I only played the game once, despite going out of my way to pick up the Frigost expansion and the first 4 character packs. Then I put it on the shelf where it's been gathering literal dust for years. This recent play reminded me of why it wound up there neglected. I hate to use the word broken, so let's just say this game has some serious flaws. Not the least of which is that because the game works on an alternating turn-based combat resolution system instead of a simultaneous one, whoever is the first player has a huge tactical advantage. There's also not a catch-up mechanism in place, and it's tough to do anything worthwhile once you get down on figures. Admittedly, this last gripe may be a flaw of a squad-based kill-everything style tactical game in general, but there are other systems that handle this better. In any event, I did not have any fun at all with my recent play. I could ask myself the rhetorical question of why I still own the game, despite not thinking about it much in the previous 4 years. But I know the answer to that question. It's because that even I, someone who leans towards the Euro style of experiences on the board gaming spectrum, can't be suckered in by great-looking aesthetics. For me, this game has turned out to be all appearance over substance. But it does have a devoted following, and there are plenty of people excited about its presence on BGA. I'm no longer one of them, though. But I do want to acknowledge one positive about the game I was reminded about while inventorying what exactly I possessed of this game. The game does feature a great rulebook, and its system of tutorials still stacks up as one of the best I've seen for teaching someone how to play. I don't think much of the mechanics anymore, but at least the rules are presented in a clear, digestible fashion. But it's not enough to save the game for me. I will not be teaching my son this one. It's going on the trade pile, or rather the sell pile, because, ironically, I need some dough for the ongoing Solomon Kane Kickstarter, a beautiful-looking minis game. Let's see what one of the contributors to the Out of the Dust Geek List has dusted off. Actually, I'm going to take a look at 2 different contributors who happen to dust off the same game this month, and see what they thought about it. The game in question is the abstract strategy game classic Blokus. Dave Peters, username Rheinelf, last played it 4 years ago and currently rates it a 7 2/3. He writes, "This was a bit weird, a somewhat ironic play with co-workers over lunch, and each synthesized a different, one aggressive, one non-confrontational, one opportunistic pattern of play, and yet none of them were considering questions like, how many of my remaining pieces can I still play? So they maneuvered themselves into metaphorical and physical corners from which they couldn't escape. It sadly wasn't close." Meanwhile, John Newman, username John P. Newman, last played it 1 year ago and currently rates it a 6.5. He writes, "This is my wife's favorite game. The last time we played it was Mother's Day last year. When we brought it out for Mother's Day this year, I realized we hadn't played it since. My wife is such a great sport, always willing to play games with me. This year I am going to make a concerted effort to get Blokus to our family gaming table more often. Thanks for the write-ups, Dave and John. Next time I play Blokus, it will be an out-of-the-dust game for me, too. Let's turn now to the reaction segment. This week I'd like to react to something more serious than my typical fare. In the wake of the conclusion of Origins last week, there have been multiple disturbing reports of sexual harassment that took place at the convention. Now this is a tough issue to talk about, but I want to add my 2 cents because it's a personal issue for me. You see, my dad was in the military, which meant that I moved around a bunch growing up. I am not an outgoing person, and any appearance to the contrary is the result of great personal effort. But wherever I went, and regardless of the type of game I was playing at the time, I found a friendly group of gamers that I could fit in with that welcomed me with open arms. And after I got married and settled down and encountered many different game groups here in Omaha, the experience was the same. That camaraderie is very important to me, and it's meant a lot to me over the years. So when I hear stories like these out of Origins, I get disappointed and frustrated that there are people out there who are not experiencing the same positive encounters that I've been blessed with. Board gaming is the greatest hobby out there, but if people don't feel welcomed or comfortable in it, their impression of the hobby is going to be something we don't want it to be. This is a danger. We've seen what happens when toxic personalities infest a hobby. Look at video gaming. I don't want this to happen to the board gaming community. I used to play video games, but one of the reasons I don't anymore is that playing video games live online is not a pleasant experience. Have you heard some of these people? It's pathetic the type of language they use and the hostile, nasty environment they've created. Board gamers can be better. I know it. I've seen it. But what can we do as players to help create the positive, welcoming, and comfortable environment we want for everyone to experience? Controlling our own behavior is the easy part. I could suggest that we simply treat others as we'd want to be treated ourselves. The good old golden rule. But let's go one step further. Let's treat each other as we treat our family. Because that's what the board gaming community is, a family. We could walk into a game store, see a complete stranger playing one of our favorite games, and have an instant connection with them. How cool is that? If we've had positive experiences ourselves, then we should want others to have them as well, and consistently. And if we know someone who has had a negative experience, let's find out what they think can be done so it doesn't happen again. But that's the hard part. It's easy to say, well, that would never happen in my group. We're a welcoming group of people. But what about if something happens in the group at the table next to yours? What if someone walks in and some random person near you goes on a racist or sexist tirade? What do you do then? What's the appropriate response? It's easy to control ourselves, but how do we influence others? That's a lot trickier and a lot more intimidating. You know what? It would be pretentious and arrogant for me to tell you what you should do. We are all unique people who react to situations differently. Some people might be comfortable confronting the offender. Some people might be more comfortable inviting the victim to play with them. Some people might be most comfortable reporting the incident to the staff or authorities on hand and letting them deal with it. Hey, these all sound like worthwhile things to me, but there is one thing I think we can all do right now. Imagine the scenario and come up with a personal plan of action. What will be your response? Develop it ahead of time. Because one thing I know for sure, and this is from personal experience and from hearing the experiences of others who have been in these types of uncomfortable situations, and I'm just being honest and realistic here. If something happens that we haven't thought about before, we're probably not going to do anything to react to it. Not because we don't want to, but because we're too stunned and surprised to react. And then by the time we gather our thoughts, the opportunity is past and lost. So let's start with that. Let's just make a plan for ourselves. And then let us be vigilant and on guard. On guard, ready to help everyone experience the positive, welcoming, and comfortable environment that we enjoy ourselves. This week in the What Have I Been Playing segment, I'd like to feature Codenames Duet. This is a game I severely misjudged the first time I played it at Origins last year. Yeah, I just got an ineffective teacher in the CGE demo area, but I thought the game lacked the elegance and approachability of its predecessors at the time. But after 37 more plays, my estimation of the game has increased considerably, and I like it a lot more. These 38 total plays are more than what I've racked up with even the original Codenames, but the campaign mode for Codenames Duet, oh boy, that's some addicting stuff. I played it 17 times straight with my friend Warren one Saturday at Spielbound when it was just the two of us. I've been playing it a lot with my wife lately. We started a path of the campaign last year. We're still working on it. We're going the Prague, Cairo, Cape Town, Sydney, Tokyo route, and are beating our heads against the final city of Tokyo right now. Funny and sad story about Codenames Duet. I recently saw a couple playing this, and the guy was just berating his girlfriend for not reading his mind. Free advice, fellas, don't berate your girlfriend during a game. She's probably not going to go out with you again. Obscure Bryce game segment time. For the segment this week, I'm going to highlight another fairly recent game that has flown under the radar. That game is Sixes, a word association game published by Eagle Gryphon Games and designed by duo Stephen Plzing and Rick Swade. Fun trivia, Stephen is an associate professor in biomedical engineering at Virginia Tech and one of the co-founders of SaltCon. Take note, Phil Eklund, you can be smart and still design games that other people can actually understand. Rick is best known as one of the owners of Eagle Gryphon Games and one of the designers of Tumblin' Dice. I had a chance to meet Rick last year at Origins when I ran demos at their booth. Real nice guy. But let's talk about Sixes. Since learning this a year ago to help demo at Origins, it's become one of my go-to party games and my word association game of choice. Here's how it works. Each player gets a score sheet divided into 6 rounds, which are in turn divided into 6 answers. Each round, a prompt card is revealed, and players must list 6 answers that they associate with the prompt. But here's the twist. During the first and fourth round, the players try to come up with answers that they think other players will also come up with. During the second and fifth rounds, players must come up with answers they think other players won't also come up with. And during the third and sixth rounds, players are given a card with 6 prompts and must list a single answer for each one that they think someone else will also list. After each round, players compare answers and score a point for each answer that either matches or doesn't match, depending on which round it is. If a player scores a point for every answer, they get a bonus point for a total of 7 points for the round, or, as the rules refer to it, to keep the game thematic, a crooked 6, which never fails to crack me up. That's all there is to it. It's pretty much a more refined and gamery version of Balderdash. I've been finding ways to average about 1 play a month with it, and it's become a staple in my rotation and a permanent part of the small games bag I take to game get-togethers. Last week on the How I Got Into Board Gaming segment, I talked about my time playing collectible minis games and hinted that getting out of those led into hobby board gaming. But the truth is that I can look further back and identify a handful of significant designer board games that I was exposed to over the years. These games were significant because when I was ready to jump feet first into hobby board gaming, these were the gateway games that put the hobby foremost in my mind. First, I can recall vividly a fateful Friday when I had just received some allowance money. Wasn't much, but I was itching to blow it when the family and I headed over to Hastings to rent a movie for the weekend. I was scrounging through the discount bin when I stumbled upon a large game with the coolest cover I'd ever seen. The cover was of a T-Rex chasing an expedition. The game turned out to be one of the last titles that Avalon Hill would ever release, the obscure Dinosaurs of the Lost World. Based on the novel The Lost World by Arthur Conan Doyle, this game is an exceptionally thematic exploration game. Now this was shortly after I just started getting into Battletech, so I was on the lookout for another game that might replicate the amazing fun I was having with that system. And Dinosaurs of the Lost World was just the ticket.